Here, in the sweltering desert, which borders the Mediterranean Sea, was the battleground that ran for 700 miles between Benghazi, in the Italian colony of Cyrenaica, and Alexandria, in British-held Egypt. Hellfire Pass was the setting for a battle that would last over 2 years and see the fall of an empire and the ruin of many military reputations. It was the dividing ground between Italian Libya and British Egypt. It would be here that the opening moves in the fight for the oil resources of the Middle East would be fought. Mussolini, ever ambitious to extend the domains of his African empire, created triumphal arches, recalling the once great glories of the Caesars. He coveted Egypt and chose the appropriate moment to attempt a further African conquest. Hitler had crushed France and threatened Britain with invasion. Now was the time to strike, and Mussolini gives the order to Marshal Graziani and his 200,000 men in Libya to advance into Egypt and take the Suez Canal. The Italian army sets off with cheerful confidence, equipped with weapons dating back to the First World War. Across the Egyptian frontier, the British army awaited the attack with a total strength of 36,000 men. Outnumbered, the British soldiers merely fall back. On the 16th of September, the Italian advance had pushed into Egypt some 60 miles and stopped at the modest fishing village of Sidi Barrani, which Italian propaganda turned into a major town. The Italians dug in and erected memorials to their conquest. On a December morning, the British, under General Wavell, attacked. What had been planned as a surprise raid quickly developed into a general offensive. The British reached the frontier and rolled up the Italian defenses. The Italians had believed themselves safe behind their barbed wire, minefields, and fortified camps. It took only a few hours to break through their front line, and in 2 days, the whole Italian position had crumbled. The British armored forces raced forward to capture Tobruk, the principal port of the region. The significance of this victory is explained by Major General David Belcham, who was in charge of intelligence for the British Army in the Western Desert.
Now I'll show you on a map in the sand the advance after Tobruk. If this is the Mediterranean coast of the Jebel Akbar, it runs like this, and then to the east, and we say here is Tobruk, and here is Benghazi. The Italians retired along the coast road which follows like that through Benghazi and eventually into Tripolitania. When the British forces arrived here in the area of Tamimi, the armored troops went due west in order to cut the coast road route south of Benghazi, and in an attempt to bottle up the remaining Italian troops in the Jebel Akbar. And this they succeeded in doing because they reached this area, which was called Bedafam, before the head of the retreating Italian columns. And in the event, the action at Bedafam was the end of Italian resistance in Cyrenaica.
For every British soldier, there were 10 Italians taken prisoner. 5 months after the start of Graziani's offensive, the Italian army is annihilated. Marshal Graziani is dismissed by Mussolini, but the defeat is critical, and the fascist regime is on the point of collapse. Now it seems that nothing could stop the British pushing the Italians out of North Africa completely. The road to Tripoli seems wide open to Wavell's troops. But with total victory in their grasp, Winston Churchill sends orders from London that calls a halt to their offensive. The British government had decided that priority must be given to sending troops and material from North Africa to Greece, which had been invaded by Italy and where the Germans would be sure to follow. The British army in North Africa had to stop at El Agheila and was still there when General Rommel arrived in Africa. General Erwin Rommel arrives in Tripoli on February the 12th, 1941. With him is a small mobile force that had been hurriedly assembled, the force that would soon become world famous as the Africa Corps. An infantryman turned tank leader, Rommel had made his reputation in the French campaign of the previous summer, when he had brilliantly taken Rouen and Cherbourg. He has no experience of desert warfare, but believes in rapid movement. On his arrival, he remarks that if Wavell had continued his advance into Tripolitania, no opposition worthy of the name could have been mounted against him. The British believe that it will take Rommel 3 months to adapt to the conditions of desert warfare. It takes him only 6 weeks. His mission is purely defensive, to prevent the British from taking Tripoli. But Rommel doesn't see it like that. The same evening of their arrival, the German panzers make their way to the front line. Rommel's nature is not at all defensive. He believes that attack is the best tactic. Immediate attack. Even before the rest of the Africa Corps have left the Italian ports, he attacks with the forces already landed. It's a classic blitzkrieg. On the last day in March, he strikes at the British positions in El Agheila and crushes them quickly. Wavell's forces have been weakened by the removal of the best troops to Greece. It takes Rommel only 12 days to push the British army back 500 miles to the Egyptian frontier and to wipe out all their gains of the previous month. General O'Connor, the commander of the British troops, is captured. It's through his successful use of lightning attack that the Rommel legend grows almost overnight. His personal contact with the frontline soldiers endears him to the Africa Corps, who say, to the right, nothing. To the left, nothing. In front, Rommel. He also earns the respect of the British soldiers, whose own generals are usually unable to cope with his tactics. Even British intelligence spreads his fame by distributing his photograph to frontline troops with the caption, "This man is dangerous." Back in Britain, jokes are made about the British soldiers who can manage easily against the Italians, but who have to retreat constantly when a few Germans appear. Rommel's army is in fact much better equipped than Wavell's. The German tanks are heavier and better armed. But it's his superiority in tactics that continuously pushes the British back. He's more daring and imaginative than his opponents. By April, the British had driven back into Egypt, where they had started only 4 months before. More than anything, the Germans need to control the Mediterranean. The British can harass the vital supply routes from Italy to Libya particularly by preventing oil tankers from supplying the conquering tanks of the Africa Corps. The island of Malta, a British military base midway between Italy and North Africa, is the key to the control of the central Mediterranean. Field Marshal Kesselring orders an aerial assault from Sicily.